I'm Lisa Rubel from Love to Color My World, and this is the first part of a 4-part series called Pillow Talk, where I'll be doing video tutorials walking you through the steps to make some fun pillows to decorate your house. Today I'm using these fun prints from the Heart and Home collection by Cherry Guidry for Contempo Studios, which is part of Benertex Fabrics. You can see I've got these cute little mittens and a coordinating blue tonal, and then these beautiful poinsettias and a green text print. So I'll be using these fabrics to make some pleated 2-color pillows that you can use to decorate in your house. So let's take a look at the pillow we're making. This pillow is pleated. It's made all out of one fabric, but with the way that it's folded and stitched, it has this fantastic texture to it. And it's really simple to make. I did the same thing on the other side, and you can do it 2-sided, or you can just do the pleating on one side and then do a regular pillow back. And then I added a zipper to close it up. So the pillow that I've created here uses an 18-inch square pillow insert, and our actual finished pillow is a little bit smaller than 18 inches. It's about 17 inches. And that allows the pillow to be nice and plump when you put the pillow insert inside. So you'll need an 18-inch square pillow insert to make this project. So I'm going to show you how to make this pleated pillow, and I'm going to do it using this cute mitten fabric from Cherry Guidry's Heart and Home line. So I've got a 18.5 by 27 inch piece of my front fabric. And for the back of this one, I'm just going to do a regular square rather than a pleated square. So I have an 18-inch square pillow back. And then I'm going to use an interfacing, which will give my pillow some shape and form on its own beyond just the shape of it. So I'm using Heat and Bond fusible interfacing for this pillow. You also need a zipper. A 14-inch zipper would be perfect. Mine's a little longer, and I'm just going to cut it when I use it because the color matches so perfectly with my fabric. And some sort of marking tool. You want to make sure that whatever marking tool you use will come out. I've used a couple, water erasable marking tools that don't always erase, so make extra sure that test whatever marking pen you have, because we will be marking on the front of the fabric, and you don't want to end up with marks on your pillow when your project is complete. So let's get started. So to make the pleats on the pillow, we're going to mark some lines, do some pressing, and then stitch on those lines. And we'll do the lines one at a time. So we're going to start out with our fabric laid down with my short edge here. And I'm going to mark my first line 2.5 inches in from the end. Make sure that you mark a line that you can see. And you may not be able to see my yellow line here, but I can see it for stitching. And then we're going to mark a second line 1/2 inch in from the first line. So we've got a line 2.5 inches in from the edge of the fabric, and then an additional 1/2 inch in. And I'm going to fold it back. And you want to fold it so that you can, on your folded edge here, you can just see your second line, the line that is a 1/2 inch in. And I'm going to just arrange it as I go so that I'm pressing, and that line, that second marked line, becomes the fold line all the way across. There we go. So what I basically have here is a 3-inch folded piece. And again, that second line is on my fold. So we've used that second line. Now we're going to use the first line. I'm going to go over to my machine, and with matching thread, I'm going to stitch on that first line that I can see. So that line is 2.5 inches in from the edge of the fabric and a 1/2 inch in from my fold. And I'm going to stitch through both layers of fabric all the way down, and that will create my first pleat. Okay, so if you look here, my pleat is sticking up in the air, and that's fine. We'll press it at the end, but I've got my stitch line, so that makes this dimensional area right here. So what I'm going to do is kind of finger press it over towards the short end and bring back my ruler. And now I'm going to draw another line 2 inches from that stitched line. So I've got the 2-inch mark lined up on my stitch line, and I'm going to mark here. So that's going to be my next sewing line. Give it another one just to make sure I can see it. And then I'm going to move over 1/2 inch, and I'm going to mark my fold line, just like we did the first time. Fold all that extra fabric behind and arrange it so that that second line that I drew is on the fold. And just press all the way across, kind of adjusting the fabric as I go to make sure that that line and the fold are the same. Okay, so I've got my folded line. Here's my first pleat, and then here's my stitch line. So I'm going to stitch down that line, creating a second 1/2 inch pleat. So here's my second pleat standing up here, and I'm going to continue working across the fabric, putting in a total of 7 pleats. So from every pleat stitch line, I'm going to measure 2 inches over, draw my stitch line, and then measure another 1/2 inch and draw my fold line, and just keep working all the way across until I have 7 pleats. One little tip as you're creating and stitching your pleats, you want to make sure that the 2 layers of fabric are both laying flat. So if you're concerned about them bunching up a little bit, you can add in some pins before you stitch, just to make sure that both the back and the front layer on your fold stay nice and flat when you stitch. So once you have all your pleats stitched in, your pillow front should look like this. And our next step before we trim it is going to be to put the fusible interfacing on the back. So I've got a piece of fusible interfacing that is 18 by 19 inches. Because we're going to end up trimming down our pleated pillow top, but we're going to start out with a slightly bigger piece. So you want the 19-inch length to go with the way that your pillow top will stretch. So it'll be parallel to your pleats. So I'm going to line up the corners at one end, and because our pillow is still actually 18.5 inches across, you'll have a little bit of overlap of the fabric on both ends, and that's okay. So I'm going to start here, and what you want to make sure, you don't want to worry about the pleats too much, but you want to make sure that the fabric, like the background fabric in between the pleats, is secured in place. So as you're adding it on, you want to kind of pull from the opposite end to make sure that the fabric isn't bunching up anywhere. So I'm kind of just giving you a quick demo here, and then what I'm going to do is go back and press a little bit longer to make sure that my interfacing is secure in place, but I just wanted you to see how I'm pulling and pressing at the same time. So you want to do that down the entire piece of your pleated pillow front so that your interfacing is secure. So once you've got your interfacing secured to the back side of your pleated front, now comes the fun part where we start to manipulate the pleats to create that cool finished look. So what you're going to do is grab a ruler or two, because you're going to need to go to 9¼ inches, and that will be the halfway point of your pillow. So line up the edge of your ruler so that you've got 9¼ inches, and then take your marking tool and you're going to draw a line straight down the center of the pillow. Okay. So now you're going to stitch down that line, and you want to stitch so the pleats are folding toward you, so they're not fighting with your sewing machine. So stitch down that line, and you'll be putting a seam right across all of your pleats. So here's our first stitch line that's holding those pleats down. And now we get to start doing pleats going the other direction. So what we're going to do before stitching the next line is to press the pleats in the opposite direction. And we're going to do it about 3 inches out from that center line. So what you can do is just take your iron and press the pleats in the opposite direction. They don't have to stay in the opposite direction, but it's just to sort of get them ready for the fact that we're going to flip it over. So then I'm going to bring this back over here. I'm going to grab my ruler and my marking utensil. And you're going to line up 3¼ inches on that center stitch line and draw another line out here. And what you can kind of do is look at the cross lines on your ruler and make sure that they're relatively lined up with your pleats so that you know that everything is straight. Now your line here, what's more important is the line between the pleats, because of how we're going to be folding the pleats back. So I'm going to flip this around because you still want the pleats to go away from you, because it's just much easier to sew that way. They will lay nice and flat. So you're going to stitch down that line, pushing each pleat down, so opposite where it is on that center line as you go. So you can see we're creating a little bit of dimensional texture there. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to start out by pressing those pleats in the opposite direction from that center line, just so they've got a little flexibility for when you go get to sew and you're not having to fight against them. So like I said, they don't have to stay pressed down in that direction, but it just makes the process easier. And then grab your ruler, your marking utensil. Again, we're going to put a 3¼ inch line on that center stitch line, and then mark just in the background sections. Don't worry about the pleats because they will ultimately be folded over. And then stitch on that line, again pushing all the pleats down so they're coming toward you, and that will make the stitching much more smooth. So I'm going to line up my needle on my drawn line. You can see I'm going to fold the pleats toward me and stitch. You want to hold the pleats so that you don't end up with a pucker in them as you stitch over them. Just fold each pleat down. Continue following your drawn line. And we're creating texture for our pillow. So I've got 3 stitch lines in, which is giving me this cool look with the pleats right here. And I'm going to do 1 more stitch line on each side in the same way, going 3¼ inches out from the stitch line that I have, and making sure that I am pressing the pleats in the opposite direction. You can go back and hit them with the iron again, or just hold them as you sew, but same things, but just in the opposite direction. So once you're done creating your pleats, the next step is to get both your front and your pillow back ready to assemble your pillow. And what you need to do is to trim your pleated top to measure 18 inches square. So you want to center your pleats, so you figure out how much you need to take off the bottoms and the sides so that this center line stays right down the middle. It should be about 1/4 inch on each side, but it depends on how much your fabric moved when you were adding your pleats. And for your backing, again, if you want to do a second pleated side, you can follow those same steps to do that. If you just want a plain fabric backing, I still recommend adding fusible interfacing to the back just to give it some nice form and shape. And so you're going to want a backing piece that is also 18 inches square with the fusible interfacing attached to it. So now it's time to assemble our pillow. And I have a confession to make. When I first started making pillows for, my couch, I would usually do the envelope backing because I was kind of scared of adding zippers to a pillow. And then I learned the easy way to do it, and I like how much better the pillows look. The front doesn't pull when you've got the zipper instead of the envelope backing where you tuck the pillow insert in. And now I only do them with zippers. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. So what you want to do is layer your pillow top and your pillow back right sides together. And this is going to be the bottom edge of my pillow. So I'm going to line up those edges and put a couple pins in to hold everything. And then going to baste along this line. So you want to set your sewing machine stitch to as large as it can go. And we're going to baste a generous 1/2 inch in from the edge of your fabric. And so just stitch along that with your long basting stitch 1/2 inch in from the edge. Okay, after you've put on that basting stitch, the next step is to press that seam open because that's giving us the location for the zipper. So I'm going to split the seam. So I'm pressing on the front and back fabrics and kind of finger press it open to leave a path for my iron. I'm going to go over it a couple times just to help it lay flat. Okay, grab your zipper, and like I said, my zipper is a little bit too long, but I'm going to trim that and that will be fine. And what you want to do is position your zipper with the pull side down. So you're looking at the wrong side of your pillow and the wrong side of your zipper. And you want to align the zipper so that the actual part with the teeth is right in that seam line. And that's where you want your zipper to be. And you want to be in, I just measure with my fingers, about 2 to 3 fingers width from the edge of your pillow. I'm just going to put in a couple pins. I like to put my pins in so that I can pull them out towards me as I'm putting my zipper on. I think that went through. So, and with that 1/2 inch seam allowance, you should be pretty well lined up that the zipper is the same width as that seam allowance. So you can just align the zipper to your seam allowances, and then the teeth should be falling right down that seam. So what you're going to do then, after you get it attached, and pin as much or as little as you like, is you're going to start all the way at the top here with your zipper foot and stitch down the edge of your zipper, again using that zipper foot. Now the important part that I often forget, because I just used my basting stitch, make sure that you switch your stitch back to a regular stitch length, because sewing your zipper on with a basting stitch is not going to hold it in place. So you're going to stitch all the way down the zipper. So I'm going to treat the end of mine a little differently, but I'm going to tell you what to do. So stitch all the way down your zipper with your zipper foot. And then when you get, on yours it will look like this. When you get past that little metal piece at the end, you're going to stitch across. And that will hold the end of your zipper in place. For me, with my longer zipper, I'm going to do the same thing, but about 2 to 3 fingers short of the end of my fabric. So I'm going to basically create my own end of the zipper. And then you're going to go up the other side, still with your zipper foot, securing that zipper in place. Now, it's a little tough to go around your zipper. You may need to lift your foot up so that you can get around it, but you can make that work. So I've got my zipper stitched on, and I want to show you. I've got I did a back and forth line a couple times just on the outside of the zipper head and then down at this end as well. And so that just secures the beginning and the end of your zipper in place. But then I've also got it stitched all the way down the zipper on both sides in line with that seam allowance. So before we sew the other pieces together, our next step is to expose the head of the zipper so that when it's time to turn the pillow right side out, we've got an opening to do it through. So I've got my handy seam ripper here, and because we just did that basting stitch, what you can do is just tuck it in there and just run it along between those two folded edges of your pillow back and front, between your starting and stopping stitches, and that will just open up and reveal your zipper right there. You'll have a bunch of little basting threads that you can either pick out by hand, or if you've got one of these handy little rubber tools, that will work great to get rid of those basting stitches. And I can open my zipper. So our very last step is to sew the other three sides of the pillow together. So you want to line up the pillow right sides together and align the corners. I like to do that first because then I know my pillow will be nice and square. So I'm going to put a pin in each of the corners and then pin along the sides. And once you have everything pinned, got it all flattened out, you're going to start stitching down here. And I like to fold the zipper this way so that it's all nice and flat with my seam allowance. And it will be a little thick, so go slow at the beginning and go backwards to lock your stitch. And you're still going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, because that will keep your pillow square since you used one right here. So you're going to stitch all the way around your pillow top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and go back and forth over your second end as well so that it's secure, and then our pillow assembly will be complete. So once you've stitched all the way around your pillow, the last thing to do before turning it right side out is to just clip the corners, because they will be bulky. Make sure that you don't clip into the seam that you just sewed. But if you can get a little bit off there, it'll help your pillow have better corner points. You've got your open zipper edge, so turn it inside out. I find it's easiest to grab one of the far corners and pull, and do that both times, because your pillow will be a little stiff from the interfacing, but that's okay because that will give you the nice shape and form for your pillow when it's sitting on your couch or chair. Okay, and then what I like to do is use one of these poking tools. Start with my finger in a corner and then move on to the tool and get the corner out as much as I can. And then once I do that in two adjoining corners, then what I do is run the tool down the seam line on the inside, and that just sharpens that seam up a little bit, helps it to lay flat, so that your backing fabric stays on the back side and your front fabric stays on the front. So I did that there. Do the same thing here, poke that corner out, and then run the pointy edge down that seam line just to help define it a little more. And then one last corner. The ones by the zipper are a little tougher because there's more going on there with the edge of your zipper. So get it poked out the best that you can. You can always play with it a little more later and make that edge nice and flat as well. And I've got my pillow insert, and I will tuck it inside. Get it all in place. And zip up my pillow. And there we go. One pleated pillow. I love the texture that it adds to it. Here's the two of them together. So I hope you enjoyed my pleated pillow tutorial. I'd like to thank Benertex Fabrics for the Heart and Home fabrics that I used for these pillows, as well as Thermoweb for the heat and bond fusible interfacing. So this is my first Pillow Talk video tutorial, and there will be 3 more. So make sure that you're following me on YouTube so that you can see them. You can also follow me on Instagram, LisaAaron1121. And if you want to see more of the numbers behind this pillow tutorial, you can head over to my blog, which will be in the comments below. And I'll have the link there, and you can see the numbers that you need in case you didn't catch them during the tutorial for measuring and cutting and that type of thing. So thanks very much, and happy pillow sewing.